All right, let's talk about Bran 5. Bran 5 is a seldom talked about chapter. I think it's famous mostly for the introduction of Osha. But there are some interesting things in here about the nature of Winterfell. And it's, you know, this is the first time we're really getting some time to learn about Theon Greyjoy and things like that. I think most notably, a lot of cat hate comes from this chapter, and it's a misinterpretation. It's missing information that was in Cat 6, and taking it only as Bran sees it in this chapter, and thus the confusion. But there's a lot of belief that Cat drops the ball on something, and that it's unforgivable, and based on this chapter, and it's plain incorrect. But we'll get to that when we get to. But there's a myth going around the fandom about Cat not passing on Ned's orders, and it's just not true. But we'll get to this. Bran. A light snow was falling. Bran could feel the flakes on his face melting as they touched his skin like the gentlest of rains. He sat straight atop his horse, watching as the iron portcullis was winched upward. Trying as he might to keep calm, his heart was fluttering in his chest. "Are you ready?" Robb asked. Bran nodded, trying not to let his fear show. He had not been outside Winterfell since his fall, but he was determined to ride out as proud as any knight. "Let's ride, then." Robb put his heels into his big gray and white gelding, and the horse walked under the portcullis. "Go," whispered Bran to his own horse. He had touched her neck lightly, and the small chestnut filly started forward. Bran had named her Dancer. What happens to Dancer? Dancer. Oh yeah, Dancer's killed during the sack of Winterfell in a Clash of Kings. But Bran had named her Dancer. She was 2 years old, and Joseph had said she was smarter than any horse had the right to be. Joseph is the new master of horse because Holland goes south with Ned. They'd trained her special to respond to rain and voice and touch. Up to now, Bran had only ridden her around the yard. At first, Joseph or Hodor would lead her, while Bran sat strapped to her in the oversized saddle the imp had drawn up for him. For the past fortnight, he had been riding her on his own, trotting around and around and growing bolder with every circuit. And so this is the do something for Bran plot. Jon is on the wall, tells Tyrion to do something for Bran, try to help him. So Tyrion decides to design a saddle for Bran based on his own saddle, and then designs the saddle for Bran. Bran then takes it out and meets Osha, and that's the end of that plot. I mean, Osha is met, and everything with Osha happens. But the saddle itself, never used again by Bran, never used again by Tyrion. Tyrion was fine riding horses like up to the Vale. Catelyn did not throw him on any special saddle or anything like that. Tyrion does not need special saddles for the rest of a Song of Ice and Fire, but for the purpose of designing a saddle for Bran based on his own saddle to have him meet Osha, this plot was there. But the there it is. The please help Bran Jon plot is resolved here. They passed beneath the gatehouse, over the drawbridge, over the outer wall. Summer and Greywind came lopping beside them, sniffing at the wind. Close behind them came Theon Greyjoy with his longbow and quiver and broad heads. He had a mind to take a deer, he had told them. He was followed by 4 guardsmen in mailed shirts and coifs, and Joseph, a stick-thin stable man whom Robb had named Master of Horse while Holland was away. This is also the plot of like Robb being like, I can help name people when Lewin comes in and is like, Catelyn, we need people named to go on positions, and she's too distraught. Robb was like, I can help, and so now Robb has named Joseph. Because Holland is south, Holland dies during Ned's arrest. Joseph, his fate is a mystery. We have no idea what's happened to him. He disappears after the sack of Winterfell. He may have been brought back to the Dreadfort as a prisoner, or he may have been killed. We do not know. So you know. Bran would have liked it better if he and Robb had gone off alone, just the two of them, but Hal Molland would not hear of it. Hal Molland is, of course, the man who eventually goes south and gets a hold of Ned's bones and is also missing from our story, Hal Molland. And Maester Luwin backed them. If Bran fell off his horse or injured himself, the Maester was determined to be with him. Beyond the castle lay the market square, its wooden stalls deserted now. This is interesting. We'll get into this. The Wintertown. They rode down the muddy streets of the village, past rows of small, neat houses of log and undressed stone. Less than 1 in 5 were occupied, thin tendrils of wood smoke curling up from their chimneys. The rest would fill up one by one as it grew colder. When the snow fell and ice winds howled down out of the north, Old Man said, farmers left their frozen fields and distant holdfasts, loaded up their wagons, and then the winter town came alive. Bran had never seen it happen, but Maester Luwin said the day was looming closer. The end of the long summer was near at hand. Winter is coming. So, the winter town. Now, it's not that George has forgotten about the winter town. He mentions the winter town even in A Dance with Dragons. But so the winter town, and this is a clear parallel because Dany was just in Vastoth Rock, and Vastoth Rock is a kind of nomadic city. It's empty, and it fills up when all of the Dothraki come and are united. And this is clearly a reference to that Winterfell and the town around it, the winter town, doesn't exist in the summertime. And that once the fields are frozen and people can't farm, everyone comes together and starts doing more manual labor, industrial. I mean, not that farm work is manual labor. I mean, like industrialized labor, services or something, digging for coal, something. But they all collect at Winterfell for the winter town. And we don't really see this ever happen because they start collecting. The winter town is mentioned in A Clash of Kings with the autumn festival. But keep in mind that people would still be, it's autumn, so people are going to be still bringing in their harvests, so they haven't collected. And then Winterfell is sacked, and the winter town burned. And so the question is, and then when winter happens, like they talk about the remnants of the winter town being buried by snow in A Clash of Kings. I mean, in A Dance with Dragons. But the Northerners never gather. Like they're out there, and there's this question of like, well, if they're not going to gather at the winter town, where would they go? Would they stay where they are? Would they choose somewhere close and local? Would they go to White Harbor? Would that happen? Would they even hear the news? Would some like random farmer arrive and be like, where's Wintertown? You know, it's interesting. Like it's a clear parallel to Vastoth Rock, that they're supposed to collect and gather, and that this is an empty town, and that Winterfell is like Vastoth Rock. But we don't know what happens to the small folk. The northern small folks' routine is completely uprooted, and we don't really know what happens to them in the story. I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess they should go to White Harbor or something, but that's a long walk for a lot of them. A few villagers eyed the dire wolves anxiously as the riders went past, and one man dropped the wood he was carrying and shrank away in fear. But most of the townsfolk had grown used to the sight. They bent the knee when they saw the boys, and Robb greeted each of them with a lordly nod. With his legs unable to grip, the swayed motion of the horse made Bran feel unsteady at first, but the huge saddle with its thick horn and a high back cradled him comfortably, and the strap around his chest and thighs would not allow him to fall. After a time, the rhythm began to feel almost natural. He anxiously faded, and a tremulous smile crept across his face. It's an awfully big word for Bran. Tremulous. I think as I say, like George does try to write in voice, but sometimes he breaks out every once in a while. Two serving wenches stood beneath the sign of the smoking log, the local alehouse. When Theon Greyjoy called out to them, the younger girl turned red and covered her face. Theon spurred his mount to move up beside Robb. "Sweet Kira," he said with a laugh. "She squirms like a weasel in bed, but say a word to her on the street, and she blushes pink as a maid. Did I ever tell you about the night that she and Bessa—" "Not where my brother can hear," Theon warned him with a glance at Bran. So Kira, of course, is the Theon takes in Kira as his girlfriend when he retakes Winterfell. He's been sleeping with her. It's very clear that the Kira is a sex worker, and he takes her in as his girlfriend when he takes Winterfell. And then Ramsay ends up probably raping her, taking her, raping her, sending her on a hunt, having her killed, and having a dog eat her remains, and renames a dog Kira in her, after she gets eaten. So that's there's Kira. Meanwhile, whatever happened to Bessa? I don't know what happened to Bessa. Bran looked away and pretended not to have heard, but she could. Bran looked away and pretended not to have heard, but he could feel Greyjoy's eyes on him. No doubt he was smiling. He smiled a lot, as if the world were a secret joke that only he was clever enough to understand. Robb seemed to admire Theon and enjoyed his company, but Bran had never warmed to his father's ward. Robb rode closer. "You're doing well, Bran. I want to go faster," Bran replied. Robb smiled. "As you will." He sent his gelding into a trot. The wolves raced after him. Bran snapped the reins sharply, and Dancer picked up her pace. He heard a shout from Theon Greyjoy and the hoofbeats of the other horses behind him. Bran's cloak billowed out, rippling in the wind, and the snow seemed to rush at his face. Robb was well ahead, glancing back over his shoulder for a time to make sure that Bran and the others were following. He snapped the reins again, smooth as silk, and Dancer slid into a gallop. The distance closed. By the time Robb caught on the edge of the Wolf's Wood, 2 miles beyond the winter town, they had left the others well behind. "I can ride," Bran shouted, grinning. It almost felt as good as flying. There's our reference to the three-eyed crow. "I'd race you, but I'd fear you'd win." Robb's tone was light and joking, yet Bran could tell that something was troubling his brother underneath the smiles. "I don't want to race." Bran looked around for the direwolves. Both had vanished into the wood. "Did you hear Summer howling last night?" Greywind was restless too, Robb said. His auburn hair had grown shaggy and unkempt, and his reddish stubble covered his jaw, making him look older than his 15 years. Yeah, a bit. Brand. I mean, I would say Robb's beard is a little much for a 15-year-old. It's not really stubble either because he's not trying to shave. Anyway, sometimes I think they know things, sense things. Robb sighed. "I never know how much to tell you, Bran. I wish you were older." There is a theory that humans in Ice and Fire world age differently, like they become adults a little quicker, which would explain the big size of people like Jon or Robb's facial hair or things like that. Or like Oberyn and Martell at 12 years old visiting brothels, that they just reach adulthood faster on this earth, on this planet. But that kind of undoes like the point of it. Like these actions are supposed to be shocking for us, the reader. We're supposed to think of 15-year-olds in our world, Dany being 14 and things like that. That's the point of it. So their age is their age. else, why have it be a plot point? I'm 8 now, Bran said. 8 isn't so much younger than 15, and I'm the heir to Winterfell after you. I think to an 8-year-old, they feel like there's a huge difference between that. When you're a little kid, I remember this when I was a little kid, thinking that I remember being in kindergarten thinking that 5th graders looked like adults and being like, well, that's pretty much an adult, a 5th or 6th grader. And then, of course, then later you're like, oh my God, what? Like, no, these are children. So for an 8-year-old to think a 15-year-old is nearly the same age, no. That's very opposite of how children think. They think 8 and 15 is a huge, incredible gulf of time. So you are. Robb sounded sad, even a little scared. Bran, I need to tell you something. There was a bird last night from King's Landing. Maester Luwin woke me. Bran felt sudden dread. Dark wings, dark words, old man, you always said. And of late, the messenger ravens had been proving the truth of the proverb. When Robb wrote to the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, the bird came back. The bird that came back brought word that Uncle Benjen was still missing. When a message had arrived from the Eyrie, from Mother, but that had not been good news either. She did not say when she meant to return, only that she had taken the imp prisoner. So this line, unfortunately, has led to people thinking that Cat didn't send Ned's orders. So if you remember when Ned last sees Cat, he orders her to strengthen White Harbor, put 200 archers at Moat Cailin, and keep an eye on Theon Greyjoy. Okay. In Cat 6, she specifically says that she sends a letter with Ned's instructions, with Ned's orders. It is completely and utterly done in Cat 6, 2 chapters back. However, because this letter here, because Bran is misunderstanding, he says she didn't say when she would return, only that she had taken the imp prisoner. That is incorrect. Like, they're clearly not telling Bran all of the information. Bran's on the outside. So and so people have taken this line to mean that Cat didn't pass on the orders. She completely passed on the orders. It's a myth that's been going around the fandom for like a decade that Cat dropped the ball on passing along Ned's orders. And that was significant, especially the one about Moat Cailin, considering that it gets invaded, but by the Ironborn. And it's just not true. Like, she passed on the orders. She did as she was told. Bran had sort of liked the little man, yet the name Lannister sent cold fingers creeping up his spine. There was something about the Lannisters, something he ought to remember. But he tried not to think of what. He felt dizzy, and his stomach clenched hard as stone. Right, because he had seen Jaime and Cersei having sex. Jaime pushes him from the window, and he now can't remember anything about it. Robb spent most of that day locked behind closed doors with Maester Luwin, Theon Greyjoy, and Hallis Mullen. Afterward, riders were sent out on fast horses carrying Robb's commands throughout the north. These are Ned's commands went to Cat. Cat sent them to Robb. Robb made commands. Bran heard of Moat Cailin. It's right there, the ancient stronghold first men had first built of the neck. No one had ever told him what was happening, yet he knew it was not good. That's the thing. No one told him what was happening. But somehow this big myth that Cat didn't pass on the orders. It's just and now another raven, another message. Bran clung to hope. Was the bird from Mother? Is she coming home? The message was from Alan in King's Landing. Jory Cassell is dead, and Weil and Heward as well, murdered by the Kingslayer. Robb lifted his face to the snow, and the flakes melted on his chest. May the gods give them rest. Alan, of course, is gonna Jory, Weil, and Heward. We have the story of the fight in the streets. Alan, he later joins the Brotherhood Without Banners, or the Proto Brotherhood, and is killed. Um, um, but he's still alive at this point. Bran did not know what to say. He felt as though he'd been punched. Jory had been the captain of the household guard at Winterfell since before Bran was born. They killed Jory? He remembered all the times Jory had chased him over the roofs. He could picture him striding across the yard in mail and plate, or sitting at his accustomed place on the bench in the great hall, joking as he ate. Why would anyone kill Jory? Robb shook his head numbly. The pain played in his eyes. I don't know. And Bran, that's not the worst of it. Father was caught beneath a falling horse in the fight. Alan says his leg was shattered, and Maester Pycelle has given him milk of the poppy, but they aren't sure when he... The sound of hoofbeats made him glance down the road to where Theon and the others were coming up. When he will wake. Robb finished. He laid his hand on the pommel of his sword and went on in the solemn voice of Robb the Lord. Bran, I promise you, whatever might happen, I will not let this be forgotten. Man, they really love putting people out with milk of the poppy for freaking days. Like when Kat got her cans cut and she was out for fucking days. Like, you're like, what are you guys doing, man? Like, you don't need to be putting people out for multiple days. Jeez. I don't know what this milk of the poppy is freaking... I mean, I know it's supposed to be opium, but it's fucking crazy. It's crazy that people are out for multiple days. Like, it's dangerous. You're not... It's dangerous in the sense that you're not getting hydration. You're not getting water. You need to be awake to drink water. Something in his tone made Bran ever fearful. I mean, maybe they mean they're like awake but not aware very much, and they're able to drink, and they're just like groggy, and like awake is like clear, but that's not how they're playing it. They're like, then they're gone and like a fucking week went by, and you're like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? You need to drink. How are these people not dying of thirst? Something in his tone made Bran even more fearful. What will you do? He asked as Theon Greyjoy reined in beside them. Theon thinks I should call the banners, Robb said. Blood for blood. For once Greyjoy did not smile. His lean, dark face had a hungry look in it, and black hair fell down across his eyes. Only the Lord can call the banners, Bran said, as snow drifted down around them. If your father dies, Theon said, Robb will be Lord of Winterfell. He won't die! Bran screamed at him. Robb took his hand. He won't die. Not father, he said calmly. Still, the honor of the North is in my hands now. When our Lord Father took his leave of us, he told me to be strong for you and Rickon. I'm almost a man grown, Bran. Bran quivered. I wish Mother was back, he said miserably. He looked around for Maester Luwin. His donkey was visible in the far distance, trotting over a rise. Does Maester Luwin say to call the banners too? The Maester is timid as an old woman, said Theon. Father always listened to his counsel, Bran reminded his brother. Mother too. I listened to him, Robb insisted. I listened to everyone. The idea to listen. Listen to, what a wise man listens to all his advisors. The joy Bran had felt at his ride was gone, melted away like the snowflakes on his face. A lot of melting snowflakes in this. Not so long ago, the thought of Robb calling his banners and riding off to war would have filled him with excitement. But now, he had felt only dread. Can we go back now, he asked. I'm cold. Robb glanced around. We need to find the wolves. Can you stand to go a bit longer? I can go as long as you can. Maester Luwin had warned him to keep the ride short for fear of saddle sores. And yet, nobody's worrying about bed sores for these people who are asleep with milk of the poppy for multiple days. But Bran would not admit to the weakness in front of his brother. He was sick of the way everyone was always fussing over him and asking how he was. Let's hunt down the hunters, then, Robb said. Side by side, they urged their mounts off the King's Road and struck out into the Wolf's Wood. Theon dropped back and followed well behind, taking and joking with the guardsmen. It was nice under the trees. Bran kept dancing to a walk, holding the reins lightly and looking all around him as they went. He knew this. He knew this would, but he had been so long confined to Winterfell that it felt as though he was seeing it for the first time. The smell filled his nostrils, the sharp, fresh tang of pine needles, the earthy odor of wet, rotting leaves, the hints of animal musk and distant cooking fires. He caught a glimpse of a black squirrel moving through the snow-covered branches of an oak and paused to study the silvery web of an empress spider. Theon and the others fell farther and farther behind, until Bran could no longer hear their voices. From ahead came the faint sound of rushing water. It grew louder until they reached the stream. Tears stung his eyes. "Bran," Robb asked, "what's wrong?" Bran shook his head. I was just remembering," he said. "Jory brought us here once to fish for trout. You, me, and John. Do you remember?" "I remember," Robb said, his voice quiet and sad. "I didn't catch anything," Bran said, "but John gave me his fish on the way back to Winterfell." "Will we ever see John again?" "I saw Uncle Benjen when the king came to visit," Robb pointed. "John will visit us too." "You'll see." The stream was running high and fast. Robb mounted and led his gelding across the ford. To the deepest part of the crossing, the water came up to mid-thigh. I guess, Bran does kind of see John out the window or whatever during, or as summer when in A Storm of Swords when their paths cross. In the deepest part of the crossing, the water was mid-thigh. He tied the horse to a tree on the far side, waded back across for Bran and Dancer. The current foamed around rock and foot, and Bran could feel the spray on his face, and Robb led him over. It made him smile. For a moment, he felt strong again and whole. He looked up at the trees and dreamed of climbing them right up to the very top, and the whole forest spread out beneath them. They were on the far side when they heard the howl, a long, rising wail that moved through the trees like a cold wind. Bran raised his head to listen. "Summer," he said. No sooner had he spoken than the second voice joined the first. "They've made a kill," Robb said as he remounted. "I'd best go and bring them back. Wait here. Theon and the others should be along shortly." "I want to go with you," Bran said. "I'll find them faster by myself." Robb spurred his gelding and vanished into the trees. Once he was gone, the woods seemed to close in around Bran. The snow was falling more heavily now. Where it touched the ground, it melted. But all about him, rock and root and branch wore a thin blanket of white. As he waited, he was conscious of how uncomfortable he felt. He could not feel his legs hanging useless in his stirrups, but the straps around his chest were tight and chafing, and the melting snow had soaked through his gloves to chill his hands. He wondered what was keeping Theon and Maester Luwin and Joseph and the rest. When he heard the rustling of leaves, Bran used his reins to make Dancer turn, expecting to see his friends, but the ragged men who stepped out onto the bank of the stream were strangers. "Good day to you," he said nervously. One look, and Bran knew they were neither forester nor farmers. He was suddenly conscious of how richly he was dressed. His surcoat was new, dark gray wool with silver buttons, and a heavy silver pin fastened his fur-trimmed cloak at his shoulders. His boots and gloves were lined with fur as well. And so here he's very clearly run into bandits. He immediately recognizes that they're neither forester nor farmer. That he is. "All alone, are you?" said the biggest of them, a bald man with a wind-burnt face. I think that's Stiv. "Lost in the wolf's wood, poor lad." "I'm not lost." Bran did not like the way the strangers were looking at him. He counted 4, but when he turned his head, he saw 2 others behind him. "My brother rode off just a moment ago. And my guard will be here shortly." "Your guard, is it?" a second man said. Gray stubble covered his gaunt face. "And what would they be guarding, my little lord? Is that silver pin I see there on your cloak?" "Pretty," said a woman's voice. She scarcely looked like a woman, tall and lean, with the same hard face as the others, her hair hidden beneath a bowl-shaped half-helm. The spear she was wielding was 8 feet of black oak tipped with rusted steel. Is this Osha? I think this is Osha, tall and lean. "Let's have a look," said the big bald man. Bran watched him anxiously. I think the second man is probably Wallen. Bran watched him anxiously. The man's clothes were filthy, almost fallen to pieces, patched here and there, brown blue and dark green and faded elsewhere to gray, but once that cloak might have been black. So we see that this bandit is a Night's Watch deserter. The gray, stubbly man wore black rags too, he saw with a sudden start. Both of them, Night's Watch deserters. Suddenly Bran remembered the Oathbreaker his father had beheaded the day he'd found the wolf pups. That man had wore black as well, and father had said that he had been a deserter. From the Night's Watch. No man is more dangerous. He remembered Lord Eddard saying, "The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, so he will not flinch at any crime, no matter how vile and cruel." Yeah, there's some truth in this. I remember when I was younger, living in China, there was news outside of Shanghai of like some burglars had broken into a house, and it turned out people were there, and so they panicked and killed everyone. And I remember people saying, "Well, the punishment for burglary is the death penalty. The punishment is for murder is the death penalty." So like, there was no advantage to not killing the people in the house. Like like if they're caught for burglary, you're dead. So you might as well try to kill the witnesses to try to get away, because there's no increase here. So I mean, the deserter, he's already going to die if he's caught, so he has to do whatever he can to, there's no motivation to not kill at this point other than one's own morality. "The pin, lad," the big man said. He held out his hand. "We'll take the horse too," said another, a woman shorter than Rob, with a broad, flat face and lank yellow hair. "This is Haley?" "Get down and be quick about it." A knife slid from her sleeve into her hand, its edge jagged as he saw. "No," Bran blurted out, "I can't." The big man grabbed his reins before Bran could think to wheel Dancer around and gallop off. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these last two will come here. Gallop off. "You can, lordling, and will, if you know what's good for you. Stiv, look how he's strapped on," the tall woman pointed with the spear. It might be it's the truth he's telling. Straps, is it? Stiv said. He drew his dagger from the sheath of his belt. "There's a way to deal with straps." You some kind of cripple?" asked the short woman. Bran flared. "I'm Brandon Stark of Winterfell, and you better let go of my horse, and I'll see you all dead." The gaunt man with the gray stubble face laughed. "The boy's a Stark, true enough. Only a Stark would be fool enough to threaten where smarter men would beg." "Cut his little cock off and stuff in his mouth," suggested the shorter woman. "That should shut him up." "You're as stupid as you are ugly, Haley," said the tall woman. Now they're getting named. "The boy's worth nothing dead but alive. Gods be damned. Think of what Mance Rayder would give that Benjen Stark's own blood to hostage." "Mance be damned," the big man cursed. "You gonna go back there, Osha? More fool you. Think the White Walkers will care if you have a hostage?" He turned back to Bran and slashed at the strap around his thigh. The leather parted with a sigh. The stroke had been quick and careless, biting deep. Looking down, Bran glimpsed pale flesh where the wound of his leg had parted. But the blood began to flow. He watched the red stains spread, feeling lightheaded, curiously apart. There had been no pain, not even a hint of feeling. The big man grunted in surprise. "Put down your steel now. I promise you shall have a quick and painless death," Robb called out. Bran looked up in desperate hope. And there he was. The strength of the words were undercut by the way his voice cracked with strain. He was mounted, the bloody carcass of an elk slung across the back of his horse, his sword in his gloved hand. "The brother," said the man with the gray stubbly face. "He's a fierce one, he is," mocked the short woman. "Haley, they called her." "You mean to fight us, boy? Don't be a fool, lad. You're 1 against 6. I guess there is 6. The tall woman, Osha, levied her spear. "Off the horse and throw down the sword. We'll thank you kindly for the mount and the venison, and you and your brother can be in your way." Robb whistled. They heard the faint sound of soft feet on wet leaves. The undergrowth parted, low-hanging branches giving up their accumulation of snow, and Grey Wind and Summer emerged from the green. Summer sniffed the air and growled. "Wolves!" gasped Haley. "Dire wolves," Bran said. Still half grown, they were as large as any wolf he had ever seen, but the differences were easy to spot. If you knew where to look. Maester Lewin and Farland The Kennel Master, Farland, I guess, comes back and I think is killed in A Clash of Kings. Yes, I think Farland is executed by Theon, because they can't find everyone with the hounds, because they're hiding in the crypts. A direwolf had bigger head and longer legs in proportion to its body, and its snout and jaws were markedly leaner and more pronounced. There was something gaunt and terrible about them as they stood there amid the gently falling snow. Fresh blood spotted Grey Wind's muzzle. "Dogs!" the big man said contemptuously. "Yes, I'm told there's nothing like a wolfskin cloak to warm a man at night." He made a sharp gesture. "Take them!" Robb shouted, "Winterfell!" and kicked the horse. The gelding plunged down the bank as the ragged man closed. A man with an axe rushed in, shouting and heedless. Robb's sword caught him full in the face with a sickening crunch and a spray of bright blood. The man with the gaunt, stubbly face made a grab for the reins, but half a second had them, and Grey Wind was on him, bearing down. He fell into the stream with a splash and a shout, flailing wildly with his knife as the head went under. The direwolf plunged after him, the white water turning red where they had vanished. So, Robb is fighting Stiv and Man with Axe. And then Wallen grabs for the reins and Grey Wind kills Wallen. And then I guess Osha comes in. Robb and Osha match blows in midstream. Huh? Her long spear was a steel-headed serpent flashing out at his chest once, twice, 3 times, and Robb parried every thrust with his longsword, turning the... Okay, so her long spear had steel-headed serpent flashing on its chest once, twice, 3 times. Robb parried, turning the point. On its 4th, 5th thrust, the woman overextended herself and lost her balance just for a second. Robb charged, riding her down. Yeah, because Robb's on a horse, so he's... At first you're like, how is this 15-year-old taking out everybody? He's on a horse and they're on foot. A few feet away, Summer darted in and snapped at Haley. The knife bit at its flank. Summer slid away, snarling, and came rushing in. This time his jaws closed around her calf, holding the knife with both hands. The small woman stabbed down, but the direwolf seemed to sense the blade coming. He pulled free for an instant, his mouth full of leather and cloth and bloody flesh. When Haley stumbled and fell, he came at her again, slamming her backward, teeth tearing at her belly. The 6th man ran from the carnage, but not far. As he went scrambling up the far side of the bank, Grey Wind emerged from the stream, dripping wet. He shook the water off and bounded after the running man, hamstringing him with a single snap of his teeth and going for the throat as the screaming man slid back down towards the water. And then there was no one left but the big man, Stiv. Oh. So now I'm going back and like trying to figure out everything here. Okay. All right, bear with me here, okay? We've got 6 people. Stiv, Wallen. Stiv is the big bald man. Wallen is the gray-haired, gray-stubbled man. Haley, Osha, 2 extra men. Oh. The ragged men closed. Okay. There's my mistake. Okay. No, it was my mistake. The gelding plunged as the ragged men closed. Okay. Everybody's closing. The man with the axe rushed in. Okay, so man number 5 is killed by Robb first. Then Wallen is killed by Grey Wind. Then Robb fights Osha. Then Summer kills Haley. Then Grey Wind kills 6th man. And then Stiv. Okay. All right. I've got it now. The confusion of battle has been resolved. Okay. And then there was no one left but the big man, Stiv. He slashed at Bran's chest strap, grabbed his arm and yanked. Suddenly Bran was falling. He sprawled on the ground, his legs tangled around him, one foot in the stream. He could not feel the cold of the water, but he felt the steel when Stiv pressed the dagger to his throat. "Back away," the man warned, "or I'll open the boy's windpipe. I'll swear it." Robb reined his horse in, breathing hard. The fury went out of his eyes, and his sword arm dropped. In that moment, Bran saw everything. Summer was savaging Haley, pulling glistening blue snakes from her belly. Her eyes were wide and staring. Bran could not tell whether she was alive or dead. The gray, stubbly man and the one with the axe lay unmoving. But Osha was on her knees, crawling towards her fallen spear. Grey Wind padded towards her, dripping wet. "Call them off," the big man shouted. "Call them both off, or the cripple boy dies now." "Grey Wind, Summer to me." The direwolves stopped, turned their heads. Grey Wind lopped back to Robb. Summer stayed where he was, his eyes on Bran and the man beside him. He growled. His muzzle was wet and red, but his eyes burned. Osha used the butt of her spear to lever herself back to her feet. Blood leaked down a wound on the upper arm where Robb had cut her. Bran could see sweat trickling down the big man's face. Stiv was scarred as he was. He realized Stiv was as scarred as he was. "Starks," the man muttered. "Bloody Starks." He raised his voice. "Osha, kill the wolves and get his sword." "Kill them yourself," she replied. "I'm not getting near those monsters." For a moment, Stiv was at a loss. His hand trembled. Bran felt a trickle of blood where the knife pressed against his neck. The stench of the man filled his nose. He smelled of fear. This is a first kind of connection of him and Summer. He has the wolf's abilities here. He's smelling with the wolf because obviously human beings can't smell fear. "You," he called out to Robb. "You have a name? I'm Robb Stark, the heir to Winterfell. This is your brother?" "Yes." You want him alive? You do what I say. Off the horse." Robb hesitated a moment. Then slowly and deliberately he dismounted and stood with his sword in hand. "Now kill the wolves." Robb did not move. "You do it. The wolves are the boy." "No!" Bran screamed. If Robb did as he asked, Stiv would kill them both anyway, once the direwolves were dead. The bald man took hold of his hair with his free hand and twisted it cruelly, till Bran sobbed in pain. "You shut your mouth, cripple, you hear me?" He twisted harder. "You hear me?" A low thrum came from the woods behind him. Stiv gave a choked gasp as a half-foot of razor-trimmed broadhead suddenly exploded out of his chest. The arrow was bright red, as it had been painted in blood. The dagger fell away from Bran's throat. The big man swayed and collapsed, face down on the stream. The arrow broke beneath him. Bran watched his life go swirling off in the water. Osha glanced around as father's guardsman appeared from beneath the trees, steel in hand. He threw down her spear. "Mercy, my lord," she called to Robb. The guardsmen had a strange pale look to their faces as they took in the scene of the slaughter. They eyed the wolves uncertainly, and when Summer returned to Haley's corpse to feed, Joseph dropped his knife and scrambled for the bush, heaving. Even Maester Luwin seemed shocked as he stepped from behind a tree, but only for an instant. Then he shook his head and waded across the stream to Bran's side. "Are you hurt?" "He cut my leg," Bran said, "but I couldn't feel it." As the maester knelt to examine the wound, Bran turned his head. Theon Greyjoy stood beside a sentinel tree, his bow in hand. He was smiling, ever smiling. A half-dozen arrows were thrust into the soft ground at his feet, but it had taken only one. "A dead enemy is a thing of beauty," he announced. "Jaina always said you were an ass," Greyjoy said loudly. "I ought to chain you up in the yard and let Bran take a few practice shots at you." "You should be thanking me for saving your brother's life." "What if you'd missed the shot?" Robb said. "What if you'd only wounded him? What if you had made his hand jump or hit Bran instead? For all you knew, the man might have been wearing a breastplate. All you could see was the back of his cloak. What would have happened to my brother then? Did you ever think of that, Greyjoy?" Theon's smile was gone. He gave a sullen shrug and began to pull his arrows from the ground one by one. Robb glared at his guardsmen. "Where were you?" he demanded of them. "I was sure you were close behind." The men traded unhappy glances. "We were following, my lord," said Quent, the youngest of them. his beard soft brown fuzz. What happens to Quent? Goes to... Oh, yeah, Quent is with Hallis Mullen. Yeah. We have no idea what happens to Quent. The youngest of them, his beard a soft brown fuzz. Only first we waited for Maester Lewin and his ass, begging your pardons, and then, well, as it were, he glanced over at Theon and quickly looked away abashed. I spied a turkey, Theon said, annoyed by the question. How was I to know you'd leave the boy alone? So the turkey is, of course, an American animal, but we do have a mixture of New World and Old World animals in the world of Ice and Fire. Turkey being one of them. I think this is actually the only reference to a turkey in all of Ice and Fire. But nonetheless, turkeys exist in Westeros. There's various foods as well that are mentioned that are American and such. But I'm trying to think of some other animals off the top of my head. Maybe some, but here we have the American turkey. Rob turned his head to look at Theon once more. He had never seen him so angry, yet he said nothing. Finally, he knelt beside Maester Lewin. How badly is my brother wounded? It's no more than a scratch, the Maester said. He wet a cloth in the stream to clean the cut. Two of them wear the black, he told Rob as he worked. Rob glanced over to where Stiv lay sprawled in the stream, his ragged black cloak moving fitfully as the rushing water tugged at it. Deserters from the Night's Watch, he said grimly. They must have been fools to come this close to Winterfell. Folly and desperation are oft times hard to tell apart, said Mr. Lewin. Shall we bury them, my lords? Asked Quent. They would have not buried us, Rob said. Hack off their heads. We'll send them back to the wall. Leave the rest for the carrion crows. And this one, Quent jerked a thumb towards Osha. Rob walked over to her. She was a head taller than he was, but she dropped to her knees at his approach. Give me life, my lord of Stark. I am yours. Mine? What would I do with an oathbreaker? I broke no oaths. Stiv and Wallen flew down off the wall, not me. The Black Crows got no place for women. Theon Greyjoy sauntered closer. Give her to the wolves, he urged Rob. The woman's eyes went to what was left of Haley, and just as quickly away, she shuddered. Even the guardsmen looked queasy. She's a woman, Rob said. A wildling, Bran told them. She said they should keep me alive so they could take me to Mance Rayder. Do you have a name? Rob asked her. Osha, as it pleased the Lord, she muttered sourly. Maester Lewin stood. We might do well to question her. Bran could see the relief on his brother's face. As you say, Maester. Wayne, bind her hands. She'll come back to Winterfell with us. Live or die by the truth she will give us. Now, what happens to Wayne? Wayne is never mentioned again. What happened to Wayne? No one knows. Wayne is never mentioned again. Man. Okay. So I would guess that when this chapter was written, there was this real idea, because they mentioned the White Walkers. There was this real idea that Stiv and Wallen were scared of the others, and that Osha would be giving stories about the others taking over and everything. That doesn't really happen, does it? Osha gives her general kind of idea about the North, but she doesn't kind of say like, oh, the others are attacking and we're all panicked. Like this presents them as these desperate people fleeing, as if this is a second Garrett kind of incident. Like Garrett has deserted and is scared and running south, and now we have a second group of deserters and wildlings. And that Osha might have some answers about the story, about who the White Walkers are and what's going on. But that's not really what's happens at all. I mean, this is the big thing. It's like you're ending with like, she's going to live or die by the truths she gives us. Like what information, what vital information is Osha going to supply on the White Walkers and the, it's quite funny looking back at it on what this was supposed to be. I mean, Osha is obviously an interesting character, and she has a role to play, but this is all presented like more desperate people from the north. What stories are they going to have? Nothing much. Nothing much. Anyway, a really fun chapter. I appreciate the character building of Robb and Theon that goes on in this. Very beautiful. Obviously, there's some time killing, but you're getting feelings about Bran and how he feels about being crippled and things like that. And that. So, yeah. So that was Bran V. Man, interesting chapter nonetheless. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.